Well, we are joined here today by Iwan Sunito. He is the president and the founder, CEO of the Crown Group out of Sydney, Australia. He has spoken on some of the largest stages in the country and in the world, really. One of the things that I read about him is that he has been a special guest at the Bloomberg Economic Summit in 2014, and among many, many other things. And I know him as a man of faith. We have had some friends in common over the years, and in fact, we've connected years ago. We connected just one time and just had a fantastic conversation about faith and about what God was doing in Australia. And at the time, our family was in Hawaii. And so we're just excited about having you here, Mr. Sunito. And we just thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Pastor Micah. Really, it's an honor to speak to you. Finally, we do get to speak face to face, though it's a long distance Zoom conference. It's fantastic.
It really is. You're actually in our future right now. I'm in Thursday, and you're in Friday. And
that's right.
So you're trailblazing right now.
One day ahead.
Pretty incredible. Well, I've kind of talked a little bit about who you are and Crown Group. You've got properties in Australia. You've got properties in the United States. You've got properties around the world. And is there anything particular that you think it would be good for our viewers to just know about you that may not be apparent in the bio?
I think in a way that my life, it summarizes the life of a comeback story life, where somebody who grew up with a lot of insecurity and struggle in the early day of his childhood, growing up in the remote place of Kalimantan with very limited education or quality education there, and had an major accident in life that had a turning point, and failed in one of the class in year 11 of the high school, and moved to Sydney and somehow find God in my life and had a turning point, and then built a business starting from almost nothing in 1994, and then towards 1990s, and with a turnover of $50,000 in the first year. And in 1996, 2 years later, we landed our first development job of $25 million job during the recession of during the Asian financial crisis, and managed to grow that business to about $1 billion pipeline 8 years later, and then faced the recession of New South Wales, where you just don't know what to do, and you wake up with a cold sweat and with pressure and depression, because there's nothing you can do, and what else? You talk to people, everybody's speaking doom, and yet overcome that and find some gold nuggets of truth into the word of what the Word of God is saying, but being planted into what you do and what you do really well. And then in 2008 and 2004, it was an honor that I was asked to lead up a church, and it was a church that was closed down. And my senior pastor, Pastor Ted Slake, who is a late pastor now, I asked him, "What do you want me to do?" He said, "Continue it, and we'll send you a pastor." But he never did. It's like, and managed to grow that church. But it was a difficult moment, because in 2004, when the church was closed, I was asked to lead the church. The business was in recession, a whole economy of residential property development, and our group specialty is residential high-rise urban resort developer. And during that time, the church that I was asked to lead was a 20-people church, and no musicians, no gifted musician, no professional. We were having a church in the open yard, and the Sunday school was an open yard it's a public school without air conditions. It was winter day, it was getting cold. You wipe the floor every Saturday and get things ready. And when you get everybody, guys, you're going to get ready, we're going to pray. Yeah, everybody say, yeah, we'll come and pray. And nobody turn up, 2 people turn up, kind of thing. But it was probably the most memorable moment in my life. But it was really the best thing that I've ever done, like 2004 when I was leading the church. And I consider that to be an honor. And I've always said to our people, I guess, in a nutshell, when you are chosen, it's not because you're the best, sometimes because there's nobody else there, but just take it, because because there's something about that, and I call the 2004, 2008 to 2008, before the GFC hits, global financial crisis hits, as a period of my life that I call a divine deceleration, not a divine acceleration. It was a period where I was slowed down, and it was a period where almost like 3 to 4 years later, I was too busy building the church, and the business was struggling. It didn't grow, the economy didn't grow, but it was a period where it was divinely slowed down. Because if I would have accelerated during that time, in 2008, when the global financial crisis hits, we would have collapsed. But because we were strong and we were slowed down, 2008 was the boom time, where then the next decade after that, from 2008 to 2018, 2020 now, I call it the period of without borders, where just acceleration just hits and the business grew. And in that 2008, we bought a $1 billion pipeline with significant profit. And I moved from being a minority shareholder in the company that I founded to become the 50% shareholder. And it was just that period that I could never think it's possible, where I was making profit on one job, where I was 50% of the business, and the profit of that single job was the same profit as the entire business in the last 8 years of the business. So that was really a period of, I call, just really acceleration, just divine acceleration, and there is no limit to the growth. And now, of course, we are now in the time of similar time that there is a crisis that's happening around, where business are being shut down, and there's no certainty, and this is a crunch time. But yeah, it's an interesting time for all of us. And now we're at the stage where we're developing residential. We have 3 hotels, and we have shopping center. We've got project in Sydney, in Melbourne, in Brisbane, and also in USA and Indonesia.
And so Crown Group has obviously been a success, and I know that you're a man of faith, but you have been through several major crises that you had no control over, much like what we're facing right now.
Yeah.
And yet you saw elevation, you saw success even in those moments. Talk about that just for a minute.
Yeah, it's actually an interesting time, isn't it? Like, it seems to be like the company seems to grow during the crisis time. It seems to be that we've gone through the recession for the last 3 recession almost, or 3 difficult economic time. And every time there's always something about that we didn't foresee. And there's a lot of principles that we learn along the way that I thought it's beneficial for everybody to kind of know. And because there'll be many businessmen today, Pastor Micah, that will say, what do I do? What do I do? There'll be a lot of employees that are potentially losing job or already losing job. What do I do? What should I do? There'll be church leaders out there that the church is shrinking, and financially the church are going through a difficult time of whether that's people are not focused anymore, or they are not capable of supporting the church financially, and therefore church do go through that same thing. There has been, I guess, couple of principles that I learned about in that. I mean, then you look back and then you say, okay, what do we do in this time of crisis? One of the lessons that I learned in 2004 during the recession of New South Wales, where I was paying interest in the rate of $70,000 a month of one building, and I could not move that stock. So virtually you'll be paying interest close to $1 million per month and per year. And that was a difficult time, right? But during that time, I kind of learned, like, there was a voice that kind of, in my desperation, in the early morning at 4 o'clock, and after many sleepless nights, it was like the voice that says, I said, God, what do you want me to do in here? The voice was saying, look, do not be weary in well-doing, for in due season you shall reap. And I said, what do you mean by that, God? Like, what does it really mean that I shouldn't be weary in my well-doing, for in due season that you shall reap? This is the time when I thought, what God is saying, whatever you've done well in time of crisis, Don't quit. Don't move to another job, but just keep doing it well. And this is where today, when people said, should I quit and move to another job? No. What you need to do in time of crisis like this, reposition yourself. When Peter and the disciples were fishing all night and they couldn't catch any fish, Jesus didn't tell them to quit the job.
Right.
What he did, he just said, reposition yourself. Same skill, same knowledge, same sea, territory, but he just asked them to reposition to a larger area. So what I asked God, what did I do well? Well, you know that you are a developer of urban resort. You are creating resort development that feels like Bali in Parramatta or in Sydney. Just do it better. You know that you're good at, you've got a great team. Just build your team better. You know that you need to used to be known in two suburbs or 2 areas. Let the whole world know you. Just go larger, like what Peter did. I just go into the ocean, go into a deeper area, go into a bigger area. So I just continue to do that. I continue to get better to what I know well. And guess what? I mean, in 2004, during that recession, I applied the same principle of just getting better to what we do well and better and doing something that the world hasn't seen or Sydney hasn't seen. On the 2005, 2006, I actually, for the job that I was struggling to sell, I was actually doubling up my profit in the time when everyone is not doing well. So the lesson to me is that whatever we've done well, just do it better in this time of crisis. Get more people to know you. Get the world to know you. If the fish are shrinking in the pond, go into the larger lakes and go into the ocean. Let the world know who you do. And in fact, that in that time of 2004, I actually don't know what to do. And a friend of mine gave me that book, The Blue Ocean Strategy, that was written by W. Chen Kim, the American writer, and that talks about how do you create your own products where you set your own rules and therefore your competitors is not relevant for you because you have your own product. And one of the great examples that I have was the circus industry. If you think about the circus industry, Pastor Micah, it's a dying industry. No one, or the kids today, do not want to watch circus. They want to play Nintendo, PlayStation, and Xbox. It is a dying industry, but this Canadian guy by the name of Guy Laliberta comes out with this idea of Cirque du Soleil, of human circus, that appeals and pitched to more the corporate world that are willing to pay $100 to $200 per night. And as we know today, the shows are being watched by almost 6,000 to 7,000 people in Las Vegas almost every single week. And the turnover is close to $1 billion. They were actually coming out with their own products that was the same product, the circus industry, but a blue ocean where you're no longer competing on price. You're no longer in the time of crisis where you say, you know what, I'm going to cut my price. No, you don't. Because what I did in 2004 is instead of competing on price and therefore you're cutting costs below your production, I said, no. And that's what the book are talking about, the red ocean, when in time of crisis, people are saying, look, just pay me cheaper, just cheaper products. And I said, no, because what often happen is every business, when they do that, the income is less than the production cost and everybody start bleeding. And then they become ocean because there's a lot of blood in the ocean. But the blue ocean talks about an idea on how you can come out from the same industry and position yourself differently. And in that book also that they talk about the golf industry and how everybody wants to play golf, but it was a difficult game. It's hard to hit that small ball, right? And the Big Bertha comes out with that Big Bertha club. And that becomes a hit because now everyone, the non-golfer and enthusiasts are now able to play the golf. And like you and me, and I play on the handicap 18, and that's the best that I can. And they turn the business into a blue ocean where they become the leader into the marketplace. So what I did in 2004. The number one of everything is really your own product. Forget about marketing. If the product is wrong, there's nothing you can market about it. So I thought about, the best hotels in the world are often built in an area that are quite a slum area. The 7-star, the 5-star hotel in the world are often developed in areas that are quite remote, where you got to go through this jungle, uncemented road, and it was just, in fact, that often what they did is they preserved the area, so that there is a contrast between the ugly and the beautiful, the not so, it's rugged to this pristine, and that contrast always works with us in anything and any facet of our life. In food industry, it has to be the sour, the sweetness, and the salt that makes the food complete. In the sound system, if you hear the best sound system without comparison, your ear is adapting to it. But if you put a lousy sound system and a good one, you can feel the differences. And in that time, I thought, you know what? A lot of the development in Asia were developed in an area where it's slum, and yet they were able to create. And you've seen that in Philippines, some of the most amazing development in Philippines and Indonesia would develop around the slums area, and yet people move into that area and pay top dollars for that. And I thought, that's what I want to create. But I was not trying to create a luxury development. I was trying to create a resort style development, and more about this sense of this 5-star resort, a Shangri-La in its true definition, a place cut off from the world and from time. So it's more jungles and all of these senses. So I produced that in 2004. And then I learned also during that time, one of the great principles, and this is what I think, when God is calling us to lead and serve the church in a time, just do it, because there's principles that we can learn from the spiritual world that can be applied in the secular world.
Right.
And I learned so much from the book, from building the church, on how we build the church. And I applied the purpose-driven church, not the purpose-driven life, but purpose-driven church that was written by Pastor Rick Warren. That talk about how he would build his church, and he creates what he called the 5C: the core, committed, converted, the crowd, and community. Right. And as we know, the core is the core leaders, like the 12 disciples of Jesus Christ. Committed is people who are committed to your cause, but they can still move on. Converted is people who say, look, I'm going to accept Jesus for the first time. It's people who are buying for the first time a Mercedes-Benz, and they say, I'll buy one Mercedes-Benz. Committed is people who say buying 2 or 3 times. Core is people like me who is not buying any other car. Like, I only want to buy Mercedes-Benz. Give me BMW, no. Give me Rolls-Royce, I can afford it, but no, right? Crowd is people who just come through the display unit of the showroom of the church, and they haven't committed anything at all. But the industry knows that that persistence breaks resistance. If they keep coming through and experience the brand, one day, sooner or later, it will break the resistance of not buying, and they begin to appreciate, they begin to like things. And as you know, like in the car industry, the easiest one to experience a Rolls Royce, they'll tell me, oh, come on, Iwan, drive it on the weekend. I said, I'm not buying it. No, just drive it. We'll send it to your house. Oh, wow, that's so convenient, right? But and that's a crowd, and then the community is people who don't know you. So what I did, I was just looking at my core and my committed and my converted, because 90% I learned from the statistic of my business. 90% of the business church members come from friends of friends. Now, in crisis time, what most people would do, let's advertise to the crowd. Well, that was good, but there's a lot of money and the conversion rate is quite low. So right now, from that time on, I developed closer to my core team, but also bring the crowd. So let the core bring the crowd, and let the whole world that do not know you to know you. So I go into the newspaper. I go into talking about the good news when the time is bad. In time of coronavirus like now, I said to my team, well, this is the best time to talk about the good news, because there's only 1 or 2 writers who can write coronavirus. The rest of the journalists out there, the newspaper out there, are struggling to get a good news to be worthwhile, to be featured. If you can help them, you'll be there. And I said to our people today, like, you don't have to buy a story, because everybody has got a story to tell. Learn not to buy the story, but be the story. So 2004, I focused.
You just said, learn not to buy the story, but be the story.
Be the story.
That is wow. That is huge. And a church can do that, but every business can do that in one way or another.
But there was a statement that I love so much from a friend of mine. He was the vice president of Regent's Hotel. He said something that I thought was fascinating, because I was doing a conference with him for 2,000 people in Indonesia that I organized. He said, you don't have to be different to be unique. Sorry, let me quote that. You don't have to be different to be good. If you're good, you are different. Now, let me say that. You don't have to be different to be good, because when you are good, you are different. What I learned is this: most people try to be different to what they're not good at. Wow. And it's impossible to be good at what we're not good at. For instance, I am not good at creating office building because I don't have the experience, I don't have the heart, I don't have the passion, I don't have the dream to build office building. I've always dreamed residential building. But as I do what I'm good at, really good at, I become different. And this is where so much in this time of crisis, don't think about quitting the job and do something else. Just be good at what you're really good and tell the whole world. Tell you, and be closer to your core team, because your core teams are the one that will bring 95% of your business. But don't stop at the core, because a lot of church pastors, leaders, or business people spend too much time only with their core. The core needs to go out and reach out the crowd, and then let the whole world know. And what's interesting is this, Pastor Micah, I learned all of this almost like when I thought about, if we were Jesus Christ 2,000 years ago with the task of changing the whole world, and we have 3 years to train our leaders, but you are given with nobody to lead, what would you do? What I saw is fundamentally is this: he's got one message, the message of grace. The message, go and make disciples to all nations and baptize them and teach them and baptize them. The same message of grace, the same message of making disciples continue for the 2,000 years. But he spent time consistently to his core and to the crowd, and he sent people to the community that is about to go. So he didn't just spend time in the core people, because a lot of leaders often make mistakes of saying, look, let's be close to the core only. I was leading Full Gospel Businessman Fellowship before, and we built 9 chapters across Australia. The next leader said, Iwan, we're just going to be close to one another. I said, you know what? If the fisherman does not go out fishing, they'll start fighting about how to fish. They'll start being busybody. You need to go out. You need to go out to reach. If you don't, I said, the fish will shrink. There's not enough fish in the pond. But we also, of course, we learn that in the secular world, there is power in branding. There is power in being known, because no smart people wants to work with the unknown.
Wow.
Now, and that's really just some of these things. Now, we had tools today to be a global company that we could never be a global company in the past unless you had global funding, global capacity, and global presence everywhere. But today with the technology, you can be everywhere and reaching out a borderless world there and tell the world about your message. So yeah, just be good, or in a way that during this crisis time, I think, Pastor Micah, the lesson what I learned is to discover our own voice. Now, a friend of mine, Pastor Dusty Din from USA, young guy, he says, find your voice and shout it loud. I like that so much. Like, find your voice and just tell the whole world about what you're good at, really. And tell the world, and not telling boastfully, but really, and just tell the world what you do. And oftentimes people say, I don't really like promoting. I'm not really good salespeople. My gym trainer, for instance, and that's an important thing for business people, stay fit during this crisis time. I had a trainer that comes 3 times a week for an hour. Sometimes I get lazy and I don't do that, but I need that 1 hour of training and to keep myself happy and excited and strong. And in this time of crisis, really, it's a time where you discover yourself, what makes you good, to reflect. And this is the best time to get rid of everything that you're not good at, to do what you're good at. and just discover that really.
Incredible. The focusing in on the things that you're good at, not trying to be everything, but trying to pick out everything fights against focus, and our world fights against focus. So that whole concept of just saying, this is what we're good at, this is the core. Now, one of the things I wanted to ask is, when you're talking about your core people, obviously you have your core team. Those are maybe your employees, your people closest to you. But
My leaders, my core leaders.
Yeah, your core leaders. Is there
Yeah.
also a core demographic of people or core customer base that you are pursuing as a business person, that you're focusing on them at this particular time? I don't know. I'm asking the question.
This is where, when you discover what makes you good, right? For instance, when I was leading the church, I was conscious about making it multicultural church. But I also know the church was built based on a lot of Filipino people in the beginning, because my former leader was an Anglo-Saxon, but the guy that led the church where I was taking over after that was a Filipino. Naturally, a Filipino draw Filipino, a South African will draw South African, an English guy will draw the English guy. And that's what makes the church strong. So what I did is I focus on building what I already am strong, but slowly shifting to where I need to be.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because the world are changing. And in that time, I mean, I'll talk a bit later about how it applies to our business. In that time, I could just see that a lot of Asian churches that are run by more predominantly Asian cultures, spoken in the language where we came from, will die sooner or later. And the reason is because the younger generations are borderless. They speak English. The culture is completely, I don't need to go to Indonesian community. I don't need to go to Filipino community, just like any chief of community. The Italian who first come wants to build an Italian church. But over time, they say, I don't need to go to Italian church. So I slowly shifted, but and then I start picking up leaders that can reach that. But I have always wanted to have a multicultural church that become a reach that reached the wider community. So I began to reach out to friends that were willing to help me. Mm-hmm. They were not perfect, but what I learned is they can understand their people better than I do. So I strategically put them in a leadership. And some complain about, oh, they're not as professional as, well, I know, but without them, their friends will not come. And everyone can be trained.
Right.
Everyone can be trained. All you need to do is train them up across the whole platform, from sound system, lighting, speaking, branding, and preaching and talking, and how do you speak in public. Everyone, once they're trained across, they become better. And they just slowly and then shift it over the next number of years. Same thing with the market today in the residential property industry. In 1997, the biggest market was Hong Kong buyer, because they're coming from Hong Kong and they're used to paying double to what they pay in Sydney. So they come into Sydney, they make a decision just like that. They think it's cheap. They know what they want, schools, where the kids are going to be sent to school, so private schools. So they go and buy properties around that place. And then towards the later time in 2004, the Korean communities are rising up. And we tap into that market. And then it shifted into the China market. So I could just see even my best salesperson could not perform as good as the Asian from China. And we had a joke often, when someone walks in and doesn't dress up and doesn't speak English, they're a perfect buyer. But because of the limitation of English, there is no way a perfectly speaking English person could reach them out, because they just don't understand their culture. I could not reach them. So I slowly, strategically positioned people in leadership. And it was quite amazing how even the non-trained people, the new people, starting to reach out to them. And then later on, of course, we realized why they're so strong in Sydney. Because out of 500,000 people that are studying in Australia, 200,000 of them were mainland Chinese.
Wow.
So you're starting to see, if you don't shift slowly to this market, you become obsolete, or you got to shift to more local market. Now, I'm not good at it because I don't live, like I don't grow up playing rugby cricket, and I don't go out to the pub. It's just not my cultures. But strategically, we kind of said, no, you do have to have all of them, but 1 and 2 has to be non-Asian, so that it becomes a culture. And 1 has to be from China, 1 from Indonesia, 1 from Hong Kong, and 1 from India. So strategically, even in my leadership of the whole team, I'm mindful of this demography, cultures, but also age, and also the genders within the company, because everyone kind of brings their own perspective, and it makes the company so much richer off in that time there. Yeah.
One thing I watched recently was your unveiling of Waterfall and the property there. There's some video online of the event, and I was really impressed by the breadth of people that you had involved in that process. I think the Prince of Malaysia was there, the Lord Mayor of Sydney was there, just a whole group, a wide variety, if you will, of people from all demographics were there. And you tapped into the entertainment industry, you tapped into every area of industry and demographic, and it was very impressive to me how you managed to pull that whole thing together and put on a what looked like a phenomenal production. Was that done? And I don't know the exact timeline there. How long ago was that put on?
We've been doing quite a few of them for a number of years, and it started almost like I thought about this reaching out community that we do not know, but also applying this principle on how the church grew in the early days, Pastor Micah. And so much so, churches like Hillsong grow across the world applying the same principle. What Jesus did was he reached out the core of his disciples, and then he goes out to the world. Then what he did, then he brings the world to his church, and the world goes out into the world. There is no way the 120 people can reach out the world. But what happened on the day of Pentecost is he brought the whole non-Jews from the world, the Jews from the known world, to come into Jerusalem. And as we know, 3,000 of them got converted. And these Jews went out to the world and spread the gospel. And I thought every business got to learn that principle, that you reach from the inside out, but don't stop reaching out from the inside out, but you bring the world to you. Hillsong does that in an amazing way, where they produce song and they bring conferences of people coming together, and the world talks about their song and sing their song.
Right.
And like we all know that oftentimes it takes about 7 times or 8 times touch for people to get used to it, to believe in you. First is they don't trust you. Second is, who are you? Thirdly, maybe you're not as bad as I thought. Thirdly, I actually like some part of you. And then the 5th time they said, I actually don't mind you. 6, I can trust you. 7, I think you can become my friend. So this is where we teach our people about the 7 times call. Don't give up, just keep calling, because persistence do break resistance. And that's what Jesus do. So I created an unveiling, and I challenged our people one day, and I said, can we launch Crown Group project just like Steve Jobs? But can you launch it larger? Instead of 100 people, can you do it in front of 2,000 people? And my team said, Iwan, 2,000 people? Where are you going to get 2,000 people? There's a lot of free event that people don't want to go to. I said, simple. If you want to kill the giant, make the giant small. And there's a principle there. Don't rely on one person to bring you 2,000 people. Get 500 of your friends to bring 10. That's 5,000. The principle that we teach, and when we launch a job and hit $385 million in 5 hours of sales, was the same principle. Instead of relying on one star to sell 100 million, we are relying on a lot of agents out there, distribution channels to sell, network referral to sell that. So, and we did that. And I also know that, it's not about my job, it's about the people who want to come. So I call that launch the celebration of innovation and design. And I said, this is not about Crown Group, it's about, let's celebrate innovation and design. But it was amazing that first day, first launch, first unveiling 2003, my staff said, Iwan, let's just book 1,000 people. I said, okay, do 1,000. On the day, the night before, sorry, Iwan, already 2,000 people wanting to come. Can we increase the room? Sure. And then bang, Iwan, can we stop the registration because there's 2,500 people wanting to come? I said, okay, just stop it. It was full packed room. And the funny thing is this, Micah, Pastor Micah, is I didn't tell them there is a celebrity. I didn't tell them that Megan Gale is going to be there and the next one is Demi Im, one of the winner of the Euro contest or one of the finalists. I didn't say that. It was just celebration of innovation and design. Because I learned when I was doing conferences before, or big concert, it's not about the star. It's actually about people having the ownership. So I didn't tell them that I'm going to be there. It's just a celebration of innovation and design. And I went up there and made my speech. Of course, what's interesting is that I could just see that everybody has a story, and everybody hear that. And Ahmed show when I was speaking there, it's not about me, it's about them. So I talk about the benefit of being number one. And I was not talking too much about me. It was more about adding value to them. But since then on, I've become the biggest event, a property event in the country, and people keep talking about it for many years from there on. Really, yeah.
It was impressive, even from afar, and even years later, watching it on a video, it was pretty impressive. Well, I know that your time is valuable, and I want to be very conscious of your time. What practical business steps would you say to a business owner today that's saying, look, I'm looking at the situation, there's a lot of unknowns. Are there a few just very practical tips that you can say, yeah, this is how you can set yourself up for success? Maybe part of it is weathering the unknown time now, but maybe setting up for the success that can come after this coronavirus scare and the situation we find ourselves in globally is wrapping up. When that happens, and it will happen, it's just a matter of when. So we have to survive that, and then there's that opportunity for maybe a new launch or a new level of success. I don't know. Have some thoughts on
that. And that's really a question that every one of us has to answer. I've always gone back to a couple of principles in my life, Pastor Micah, if you allow me to speak to some of your leaders out there. Our time is similar to a time of Habakkuk when he was looking at his field and he said there is no fruit in the field and there was no animals in his farm. In other words, he was actually struggling. Whatever he planted, whatever he did, whatever he tried to do was failing. But what I saw, what's beautiful about that was when God is saying to him that I want you to, and these are the three principles that you can apply to our life, that in that time of hardship, God was saying, I want you to stand up in the watchtower and hear what I've got to say for you. Write, and then he said, write the vision. And then he said, write it so plain, so simple that the one who reads it may run with it. And then he said, this vision is for an appointed time, but it will come. I applied these three principles in my life. And I have not, whatever time, whatever it's hardship of family, difficult thing is, that I go back to number one is, what is the vision? That it doesn't matter what the world is saying. And I kind of learned during this time, probably to just turn off the television, because there's nothing I can do about the coronavirus. There's nothing I can do about the global financial crisis. I was on holiday in New Zealand and I shut down the television because it creates a panic to me. And I kind of said, you know what? Which report will I believe? Good report or bad report? In the time of crisis like now, you can actually talk to a lot of business people that were doing fantastically well. The fruit market farm, they are making a fortune right now. The Zoom business is booming around the world because people want to tap into the Zoom conference now. For us, we are accelerating our progress in terms of how we talk to people over online. With that, I was trying to train our people for 1 year without success. In the month of March and February and April, we have sold units that we've never sold in the last 2 years. The record of sales, and we said, how did it happen, right? So I learned that in the time of crisis like now, go back to the vision. Go back to what is in your heart. Go back to what you want to do. And I've always focused on quality and quantity and set a bar that is higher. Don't set a bar that is low, because oftentimes I learned that the size of our vision determines the size of our action. If we give up, our action will be giving up. But if we say, you know what, this is the best time for us to do the best that we can. In the time of crisis like this, we're not going to give up on our vision. In fact, let's look at the vision larger. And as we know that without the vision, my people perish. There is a translation that says that without the vision, my people become unrestrained. In other words, that we lost guidance without the vision. We lost bearing. We don't know what to do or what's the next step, because there's no vision to guide us. Just go back to that vision. When I was building up my business, I had a vision of giving $1 million to the work of God. And I was 2-3 years before that, I was doing kitchen hand, washing dishes for $3 an hour. There's no way that I could make it. 5 years later, I said to myself, like, there is no way that I could ever fulfill that vision. I couldn't even buy a car. But that vision keeps coming back to me, one day, and the book of Joshua 1:7-9 just kept coming back. If you just really don't turn to the right or to the left, and just be strong. Don't lose your heart easily, because God is with you wherever you go. You're going to be blessed, not because the place where you're in, is because He is with you. And that vision keeps pulling me back, and I start just asking, and of course, many years later, and $1 million is just insignificant for our business now. And in time like now, I go back to the vision. What is the vision? Number 2 is write it so plain, map it out, talk to people. How did you overcome crisis? And talk to people who's been successful, but also talk to people who has failed and bounced back up. Because many business people fail, but many business people also rise back again. And I've seen people who went bankrupt and then rises up to be the biggest businessman in town right now, because failure is never final, as we learn in life. That failure actually teaches us how to do better. So map it out, and really starting to identify, map out your customers, be detailed, be so plain, so that you can tell your leaders about, hey guys, our vision is we're going to sell X dollars. Our vision is we still want to reach 1,000 or 2,000 people. And then map it out. Who do they look like? What do they look like? What is our strongest gifting in our life? Now, in my case, my strongest gifting is selling properties to the Asian world. Why is that? Because I'm building in the city. And why is that? Because the local buyers can buy secondhand, but the foreign buyers to Australia has to buy brand new. Now, I'm only building about $500 million a year, right? That's 500 units. If I sell 500 million to the Chinese, that's only 500 people from China. That's not impossible, but that's what I'm very strong, but I'm not forgetting what I'm strong at locally too. So I do not give up. I just keep continuing to build up to what I'm good at. I'll start mapping out who's my core and start reaching them out. If I can be present with them physically, my team and I can be present with them in the virtual world. So we go and start setting up the 360-degree video. So you don't have to come to my unit. You just look at my unit from a distance. And my people now learn about how to become a presenter. I was teaching them on how to do video presentation, how do you move your camera, move it slowly, and cut and paste. And I used to do that when I was building the kitchen. I love video camera and all of these things that and I know how to do it, and I teach them that. And we could never do that during the time of non-crisis, right? So now I'm free, and I teach them, and within a week, we accelerate so much of the learning within this time. But map it out is to do with network and mix with the wise. Talk to people who's been there and bounced back up. It's good to talk to people who get discouraged and encourage them, but I think we are called to be the salt, not to be influenced, but to influence people. When people are talking negative, we talk about the positive thing, because the opposite is actually worse. The number one is about follow through. You have to follow. If you want to see it through, you must follow through. In other words, it will come. Just keep doing what you're doing good. It's often not the capacity, it's often the attitude. It's not because we can't, it's often that we do not want to. This is the time where we say, look, you know what? Even if I fail, I will rise back again. Even if I lose money, I will bounce back again. And I've been in that road where during the time where I was learning how to build a church, and the business was losing money. And I asked God on that time, and I said, God, I thought that people who help you, you're going to look after us. Why am I losing money here in my business? Because at that time I was doing a big conference and I was too busy. There's no turning back. I was helping churches to build a conference, and my business was losing money. And in that time, there was a word that I hear like, Iwan, you build my house, I will build your house. I was like, okay. I said, okay, God, I will build your house now, and you build my house after this. 6 months later, I was losing money, $90,000 out of the business. And at that time, $90,000 was a lot of money. But 6 months later, I launched a job and I sold $23 million, and I made $5 million from that job in one single launch without advertisement. Because what I learned out of building conferences is about building the demand, supply, transferring ownership, reaching out your core, the crowd and community. I was applying it to the business world, and bang, I learned something amazing there. That's one principle that I learned there. Now, the other principle I think, Pastor Micah, that I learned is, people ask me in one of the conferences, if there is any one message that you can pass on to people out there, what would that be? And I kind of illustrate them to this message here, through this message. I went to China one day, and I was talking to a very state-owned enterprise. I mean, massive, 30, 40, 50 billion dollar company, and they want to invest in my business. We were in discussion, and they presented me with this gift of a 5-dragon, golden dragon, and said, here's a gift for you, Iwan, and we'd like you to keep it. And I said, why is it 5-dragon? And they said, because 5 is an auspicious number for Chinese. It's one of the luckiest number, not number 8, but number 5. And I said to the chairman of this corporation, and I said, in the Bible, that 5 is also the number of grace. In other words, that you get what you don't deserve. That we get something that we don't work for, and we get it. And often in our life, in my life is a reflection of that grace. I get what I don't deserve. An accident that I had in Bali, after I failed one of the class, that I had a coma for 5 days. Then I was put into a class of the best 5 students, the best top 5 in the whole school. But the change of friendship changed my thinking, my perspective. I used to think, well, it's too hard. I don't need to learn about it. And these people say, it's so easy, let me teach you. And I learned from there on. I said, I better mix with the smart one because it's faster, it's quicker, right? But it wasn't planned. It was an accident. I said to my mom and dad, I said, can I go on holiday after my school failure? And they said no. I said, no, can I just go? Because it'd be the final time that I'll ask. I almost had that final day, in my life. But it was an accident, that almost a mistake that tends to become a miracle in my life. Did I plan for it? No. Did I ask for it? No. But it was somehow through the grace of God that I was allowed to go through this time. It was the best, because after that I realized I wasn't that stupid at all. All I need is a lot more coaching, a lot more tutorial, because practice always makes perfect. So in time like now, get involved, do more, because I learned all this television interview, public speaking through church. No, I didn't go through all of these things, schools of public speaking. I never do. I was just fortunate enough to be able to meet with some of the best pastors in the world and speak to them, and like Pastor Jensen Franklin, Pastor Bernard from New York. It was just learning from these people, and just through that things, I was learning something that I never learned, and I just applied to it through this time. But it was almost the grace of God also that the church was closed down. It was the grace of God that I didn't grow from 2004 to 2008, because if I would have grown, the whole company would have collapsed. In 2004, 2008, I was not growing. I was building a small church. And I consider that to be a privilege. It was almost like Nehemiah, who left his secure job to build the wall of Jerusalem and living a place of security, of prominence. And in that time, many of my friends said to me, Iwan, why on earth would you do that?
Right.
You know, you have a place of prominence, you can influence, you can talk to Prime Minister and people, and you have chances to speak to people. Why do you want to lead a lot of these people who are domestic workers and students? I said, you know, in life, sometimes you do things irrational because your heart tells you to do it, and you do it because you feel like this is the right thing to do. And I call them stewardship. I never really liked to lead a church. I never liked to be called a pastor. But that's, I guess, the Bible talks about stewardship, where you do things because it's required, not because you want to do it, not because you love it. I hate it. But I do like sharing and encouraging people. I do like to mentor people because I used to be nobody, but some people along the way are helping me to be where I am today. So it was the grace of God that helps me there. It was the grace of God that straight after uni, there's a crisis in Hong Kong. All Hong Kong people want to get out from China, and they moved to Sydney. And I got my first job, second job, and they trusted me with $5 million. I never had that experience. I didn't choose for it. But along the way that I kind of learned that there is going to be a sustaining grace that sustained us during the crisis time. But there was also going to be an abundance grace when the grace of God is just abundantly pouring into our life. And it's not what we do. It was just his grace in our life. And he gives us more than what we can think of. Now, this is where just don't lose hope, you know, in this time of crisis, because the book of Habakkuk said, you know, just wait for it, because it is a vision from God, and it will come. You just don't give it up too easily. Don't give up, you know, because there will become a time when what you put as a seed will grow into 1 tree, 2 trees, 3 trees, into a forest. But just don't let go what God has given you. And maybe one final one, maybe Pastor Micah, there'll be always a question from people out there. How do I know it's for me? How do I know it's a gifting for me? You know, business people are always saying, well, God told me something. And that's why I'm always conscious about that. And I'm not discrediting when people are saying, God is telling me to do something. But I believe that, you know, like every one of us is given a shape, a body form, which is really the acronym of spiritual strength. H is for the heart, A is the ability, P is personality, and E is experience. That every one of us has been given the shape that kind of indicates what we are like, the spiritual strength of our life. We are given, whether we are gifted right from the day we're born, there's a gifting. Some of you will become, in the spiritual world, as an apostle, as a prophet that's pointing, as an evangelist that stands tall among the rest of the people, because you are the evangelist out there. And some of you will be the pastor, who are, like I always call it, that's why we put our wedding ring, because they're wedded to the church. They don't really like to go out. They just love their own people, right? And you got some of you is insignificant in the eyes of people, but you are a teacher. But all of them was given to strengthen a ministry, a business, or body of Christ, because without the apostle, the apostle can touch everybody, but the other fingers can't touch. But if you lose the apostle, you lose the organization, the governing. That's why I think there's God has given us the apostle to govern, the prophet to give direction to our life, and an evangelist to edify, to encourage people, and a pastor to care for people, and a teacher to strengthen. Because through the teaching, if you lose this in life, we lose our smallest finger, we lose 50% of our strength. And in the business, you have the entrepreneur that govern everything. They have the ability to touch everyone's life. You have people who is gifted about the strategy, the thinking, what's ahead. They are almost a prophet in the secular world, and they're the evangelists. This is the sales and marketing people. Everything is wonderful. It's fantastic. Nothing goes wrong. But if you think about after sales service, it's the manager, the pastor in the business that says, how are you going? Apostle says, what have you built? What can I do to build your life? The pastor is sitting that or the manager, the carer, the HR was sitting down and say, how are you going? How is your life? And can I help you? And they just be a listener to you. They will not say to you, what do you want to do 5 years from now? That's the apostle. and the teacher was so good and detailed. They'll explain to you, oh God, can you just get to the chase? Can you just tell me what the conclusion is? But they go and explain the reason for the whole thing. And these are the gifting that God has given us in our life. Spiritual strength, the heart, the ability, personality, and the experience. Now, the reason why, and we all know that in our life, people who comes out from drug addiction will always have the heart to care for the drug addiction. Right. People like me who struggle from my early day of schools have the heart to train and mentor young people who are like me before, right? People like me who struggle in my early day of business have the heart to teach people of my kind. So this experience tells us what we are. My experience is my dad is a businessman that cuts timber for the roof shingle. So it's always house. Then when I grew up in Surabaya, my grandfather that I grew up, what I spent about the next 6 years of my life, manufactured furniture for houses. All this antique, beautiful furniture, it's houses again. In my university day, I've got all of these Asian friends of mine that are moving to Sydney and that said, can you fix my bathroom, my garage, my fences? And all of them is houses. When I work for this a company, first thing they do is, can you design the house? Oh my God, it's not a house. But it was quite obvious that it was the house that I was experienced with. I have no experience in designing commercial building, shopping center, and I never have the heart for it. And this is where, go back to your heart, where your heart is feeling to, look at your experience. The past is often the predictor of your future. And now, there'll be temptation for people to say, and they'll tell me, Iwan, let's stop property development. Let's run something else. And I said, I'm not good at it. Even the worst to what I'm good at is better than the best to what I'm not really good at, really. So,
oh, good.
Go for it. And this is, I think, it's a good time of finding yourself, and don't lose your vision. Go back to the vision, and just keep looking at it. And just keep redefining it, and focus. And if you're a salesperson, start putting numbers. And if you're working for someone else, look, multiply your salary by 5 times and put it as a goal 5 years from now. That's a vision. 5 is the number of grace. If you make it 5 years from now, you know it's not because of you. And it was amazing, Pastor Micah. I have helped a lot of young people who were growing the salary from 35,000 to 50,000 in 5 years. And I coached them and I said, 5 years from now, I want you to be 5 times. That is 100% growth per annum. That's impossible, right? That's 500%, not 100%, but it's impossible. But I said, that's your vision. Do you want to believe with me or you don't? If you can just believe with me, because often it's not because you can or you can't, it's because you want it or you don't want it. You want it badly, you're going to make it. So we sit down and start mapping out, okay, how are you going to go from where you are, 35,000 or 50,000 to $250,000 5 years from there on? And we begin to map that the possibility, well, you can be doing coffee shop, but you're not good at coffee. Well, you can work at night, in a grocery store somewhere, and you probably get another $10,000 a year, but what would your friend say to you? If you're in a managerial position and you're working as calls as a delivery, it doesn't look good in your image, right? Besides, it's only going to be $10,000 for you. And you're good at sales. You know what I'll do? Here's part of your mapping. The Bible says, walk with the wise, you will become wise. I want you to do exactly what my son's university taught them to do in USC. You don't have to know everything. It's not what you know, it's who you know, right? And start mixing up every week with your boss, with people who can stretch you. That's all you do. Because I was not able to see anything that creates a path towards that path. All I could see is he either move up his company to become the next leader, or I don't know what else that he's gifted other than being a salesperson. And he did that every week. And he met with people and he said, oh, my boss is terrible. That's good, I said, because your boss is terrible. Nobody wants to be close to him. And you just said to him, look, can I sit down with you? Can you mentor me? Can you help me? I want to bounce idea with you. Can I buy food for you? I said, just pay for it, it's fascinating, really, because even if you pay $50 a person a week, one person a week, that's only $2,500 a year, right? But I can bet if he likes you, your salary will grow up more than $2,500 a year. So it's a logical investment. He did that, by the grace of God. A year later, there's a position for him. And 3 years later, he was launching a job and he was earning $500,000 in one single launch. Now, what was changing there? We set a vision for him. We map it out. And he began to map that positioning in his life, value propositioning, branding, co-branding. Because it's not about who you are, it's often about who you are associated with, the perception of value. And then I start mapping out, how you can get financially to that. Learn about numbers. Even the Bible talks about the book of Numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Learn about numbers. Like many of us will be saying, look, like me, I'm trained as an architect, artist, designer. I'm saying I'm not good at numbers, but we all learn that you can be trained. I was training myself about numbers. And oftentimes now I can work out a 2,000 units development within 5 minutes. I could just look at that and say, oh, it's a few $100 million profit, turnover of X. And I said, how did you do that? Because I've done it so many times. And then I said, and then we just keep on speaking life, speaking faith to him and not giving up. And a few years later, it was just an amazing thing that he made it. And it just happened to again and again to people, business people, that didn't grow that business. A year later, and I said, look, okay, how are you going? Well, I was actually in Bali on a conference, and in that conference, I said to my friends who run that church, I said, you know what I'll do? I said, I'll spend time with 12 of your people or 15 of your core leaders that are spending time in making this conference possible, but I teach them on how to do the things right. And then one of them's a photographer, a lady. I said, look, what can I do? What should I do? I said, what do you do, photographer? I said, why is that? My business is not growing. Should I quit my job? Should I do something else? So I begin to ask the same thing. Where is your truth, your heart? What's your ability? What else do you have as a skill? Well, I kind of know that she's really good as a photographer. That's what she is. And I said, okay, let me teach you these 3 principles. Let's begin with the end. Let's set a vision. Let's set the goal. I said, a year from now, you will be double as a business, your turnover. It's impossible. I said, I'm not growing. Well, I'm just saying to you, a year from now, I want you to believe with me that your business will grow double. Second thing, I said, let's map it out. Here's what you're going to do. Value proposition. If you take a photography of nobody, they can only pay you so much. But if you take photography of an important people, and if people perceive you to be important, guess what? They'll be willing to pay you more. So why don't you start looking at your core? Who are the people that believe in you, your family, your church friends that are willing to support you? Ask them to lead you to another friend. Forget about, don't forget about Facebook and advertisement and Instagram, but I'm just telling you, that is going to take a while for you to get a customer, but do that, right? And then start doing crowd event. Let's do co-branding. Do an event with a bang. And people will say, wow, you're doing an event with a bang. And then the third one, I said, I don't want you to give up on this vision because it may not be this year. This coming year, it could be 2 or 3 years, but just don't give up because I couldn't see what else you can do. And I'm relating that story by Peter and the disciples say, reposition yourself, not changing your job. A year later, she came and approached me after the conference and said, Pastor Iwan, and at that time they called me Pastor, and I said, Pastor Iwan, I just want to tell you that, my business has grown 100% more the year after. Now, in closing, maybe Pastor Micah, I would like to think that there is so much value of having pastors in the business life, the businessman. Pastors is a leader by nature. Pastors is a businessman by nature. It's just that they move in the spiritual world. But if we know the two things actually is parallel. But there are value that pastors can actually bring. Pastors can speak to the people's life and speaking faith to their life. And really, some of the business principles that I learned was more about hearing the voice of God. And it was just like one incident where I was about to buy a property. One pastor came and preached the word, and he says, Your experience does not determine your future. Oh, okay. And I thought, what does it mean? And that time I was tendering for a job, and I pulled out from that job. And guess what? I was able to win the job the next year and win it with significantly cheaper than what I was tendering. It was the voice of God. It was the voice of God that talks about being humble, knowing that you are there by the grace of God, and we need that perspective in our life. It was the voice of God that kind of teaches us this foundation in our life and speaking faith. Because once the spirit of a person is broken, there's nothing left there. I can work with my strength. There's only so much I can do. I can work with my mind, and I can become more creative. But if my spirit's broken, that's the end of it. And I would like to probably encourage the business people within your church to become the 12 disciples that become the provider to the crowds that are needing it. And what I mean by that is this: instead of looking for speakers, conference speakers to come, there are people within that. If the gift are released to the community within them, their gift will multiply. When 5,000 people were hungry, Jesus didn't solve the problem. He actually talked to his business people, or to his disciple, and said, what should we do? In other words, they actually involved them. And then he asked them to solve the problem. Well, go and find it yourself, the solution.
Right.
And they said, oh, well, you know what, it's easy, just cut off, just let them go. Business people, learn about talking to your leaders, to your team. Hey, what's the solution? Because when that discussion happened, you participate within them. And Jesus said, well, find it among them. He knows where to find it. And they find that 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes. And he said, go and share it. Well, the reality is, even if they share it among themselves, there's not enough there. Now, in time like this, business people are starting to say, no, it's not even enough for me to share. And I have my own problem to care about. I shouldn't really worry about other people in the church. No, just go and share it. But when they share it, the gift was multiplied, and they were able to have more abundant for themselves. In time like this, it's not time to retract. It's time for you to go out there and help people who are discouraged and starting to apply what you learn, and probably just sharing what you have and help people along the way. How can they overcome that, really? And I think, and I can see that as much as we are being selfless, we are selfish. In other words, that there is going to be a blessing in disguise out of doing that we don't ask for. And I think that we do that because we're selfless. We want to help people, but in return, there is something good out of it, really. In 2004, the crisis, the church that closed down becomes a blessing for my life. Is that divine deceleration? And in the next 2008 to 2020, it was acceleration. Now, what do? I just go out to the media and speak about faith in life, and speak and involve the team, but knowing enough, really. I think it was it the book of Micah 7:8 that says that, do not rejoice over me, my enemy. When I fall, I will arise. When I am in darkness, the Lord will be my light. Thank you, Pastor Micah, for that.
Wow. I thank you. You're a fount of knowledge and wisdom just pouring out into us. And I really appreciate your time. And you told me that you could give me a half an hour, and you've given me far more than a half an hour. And I appreciate it more than I can tell you. I want you to do one more thing, and that is, would you just pray blessing over all the business people that will be listening to this, and just pray God's blessing over each and every one.
I want to speak to all of you that, just like in the book of Isaiah, when they see nothing, God is saying to you to stretch out your tent, strengthen your stakes, because you will expand to the right and to the left. And I really believe that this is not a time of deceleration, but I believe this is a time of acceleration. When things that used to be slow becomes faster. When things that is in your life that has taken you for years and you haven't seen any result, and you're seeing it happening right now in your very moment, doors are being opened, ideas being open, hidden treasures in your life are being discovered. Hidden treasures within your people are being discovered. Talents that you didn't think that you have are being discovered. New territory that you have never discovered are going to be discovered. I believe that this is not a time for us to be discouraged, but this is a time for us to strengthen ourselves and go out on the attack and not retreating, but really to go out and speak life and build the vision and what God has put into your life. And I pray that this is going to be a decade for you that you say, wow, that was truly not a deceleration, but a godly, divine acceleration in all of our life, in your church, in your leadership, in your business, in your family. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. And I just love how you did not focus on the issues of the coronavirus. You focused on you said, I pray that this will be a decade of. You're looking far beyond what the momentary issue is in life. And wow, I appreciate it very much. God bless you. And thank you so much for your time today. I know this is going to be a blessing to many businessmen, businesswomen. I encourage you. Thank you for taking your time with us, number one. And number two, I encourage you in the Lord. Be encouraged in the Lord. And you know that we are here. We are here praying for you. We believe in you. And we know that your best days are ahead of you because God is for you. If he is for you, who can stand against you? That's his promise. That's his word. In Jesus' name, amen.